Good evening, this is the evening for Friday, July 24, 2026. I'm your host, and tonight we'll walk through the stories shaping the end of the week. We begin with health news, where measles cases have reached a new high. The United States has recorded 2,318 confirmed cases of measles so far this year, mostly among children. That tally, over less than 7 months, is already more than the total number of cases in any other year since the virus was declared eliminated in 2000. The uptick is part of a grim trend. Through the first 25 years of this century, annual case counts were usually under 100 and never above 1,500, but now, in both this year and last, cases have surpassed 2,200. Reversing course would probably require a significant increase in vaccination rates, which fell during the pandemic. Later this year, a panel of international experts will meet to determine whether the U.S. has lost its measles elimination status, long viewed as a crowning public health achievement. Last year's record of more than 2,200 cases included 2 deaths among unvaccinated children. Turning to another health matter, the Cyclospora outbreak linked to iceberg lettuce has expanded to 9 states. Illinois, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Pennsylvania have joined Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, and West Virginia in the outbreak, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. At least 1,947 people have become ill and 98 have been hospitalized. The Food and Drug Administration has traced the infections to iceberg lettuce supplied by Taylor Farms and grown in central Mexico. In pharmaceutical news, a panel of Food and Drug Administration advisors has pushed for broader use of certain peptides. The advisory committee is evaluating 7 peptides that were previously banned over safety concerns, including compounds such as BPC 157 and TB 500. Despite the prohibition, these peptides have grown in popularity among consumers who obtain them from longevity clinics, alternative health providers, biohacking influencers, and even TikTok. They may be produced in unregulated labs, often in China, and sold as research-grade compounds. The FDA is evaluating the peptides for specific uses. Shifting to national security, an Iranian threat prompted a change in the president's travel plans. Multiple sources told The Times that President Trump made the switch because of a credible threat by Iranian proxy forces targeting him and his aircraft. He had flown into Ankara on the new Qatari-donated Boeing 747-8, which lacks the same advanced defensive capabilities of the older Air Force One, as previously reported. The threat led the Secret Service to urge him to depart Turkey on a different plane, raising questions about the security of the Qatari-donated jet. The White House press secretary said this week that the new Air Force One would be taken out of service for about 1 month this fall for additional upgrades and enhancements. The same Iranian developments also have the administration weighing a broader strategic shift. President Trump met on Friday with top advisors and senior members of his cabinet to decide whether to intensify the military assault against Iran. He has insisted that the U.S.-Israeli conflict in Iran would be a relatively short excursion, although it has already lasted nearly 5 months with no end in sight. The meeting came as Mr. Trump faces a potential inflection point after the collapse of a fragile ceasefire and a memorandum of understanding that was intended to bring the United States and Iran back to the negotiating table for a longer-term denuclearization effort. Intelligence assessments also shed light on the motivations behind Iran's leadership. American intelligence agencies believe that Iran's new supreme leader, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, is far more interested than his father and predecessor in pursuing a nuclear weapon. The previous supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had renounced nuclear weapons and, after being killed early in the war in an Israeli attack aided by U.S. intelligence, had sworn off developing a nuclear weapon. Back on the domestic front, a legal admission has stirred controversy over federal funding. In a court filing, Trump administration officials acknowledged this month that they had terminated more than $7.5 billion in federal grants for clean energy projects based solely on political criteria. They targeted projects in states that voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Although the move had previously been framed as protecting taxpayer funds from waste, an Energy Department lawyer acknowledged that none of the grants were terminated on the basis of any programmatic, statutory, cost reduction or performance-related factor. In political news, the Democratic Party is reshaping its primary calendar. A powerful panel of the Democratic National Committee voted on Friday to make South Carolina the first state in the party's fight for the 2028 presidential nomination, after a lobbying push that at times fractured Democrats along racial, geographic, and ideological lines. Party officials voted on Friday for 6 states to hold primaries before Super Tuesday, which will be held in early March 2028. The preliminary calendar would go as follows: South Carolina on January 22, Nevada on February 1, New Hampshire on February 8, New Mexico on February 15, Michigan on February 22, and Virginia on February 29. Within that same Democratic landscape, a high-profile endorsement is making waves. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a popular second-term governor, is wading into one of the most contentious Democratic primaries of this year's midterms. She endorsed Representative Haley Stevens on Friday in Michigan's hotly contested Democratic Senate primary race, seen as a major test of the Democratic Party's direction. The endorsement arrived 11 days ahead of the primary. Ms. Stevens, a centrist and a favorite of the Democratic establishment, is working to fend off Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, a progressive former health official running with support from left-wing leaders including Senator Bernie Sanders. Halfway around the world, youth activism is taking on a new form in India. What began as a student protest over a cancelled college entrance exam has grown into a wider campaign against corruption, poor job prospects and mismanagement of the education system. The demonstrations are a rare challenge to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who for more than a decade has projected an image of nearly divine infallibility. Today, thousands of young people protested in Mumbai and New Delhi. After talks with the organizers, the self-described Cockroach Janata Party, which derived its name from an insult, Modi's government offered some concessions. Yet protesters said they would keep pressing for their central demand, the resignation of India's education minister. In addition, representatives of the Prime Minister agreed to compensate families affected by a major exam leak. The protests have sent thousands into the streets on Fridays, where some have been beaten by the police as the government sought to buy time in negotiations without conceding to the central demand. In Mumbai and New Delhi, demonstrators have turned out again to vent their anger over a botched medical school entrance examination that affected millions of young people, and a wider sense of frustration about a lack of jobs and opportunity. In Kolkata, police have used batons to disperse crowds. Shifting to the world of entertainment and business, a major Hollywood deal is on hold. Paramount agreed to a proposed freeze until June 2027, unless a judge issues a ruling before then on a lawsuit blocking the deal. The company said on Friday that it had agreed to halt its merger with Warner Bros. Discovery until next June at the latest while a judge considers a lawsuit from state attorneys general who sued to block the deal. The delay is described as the latest curveball in a deal that would remake Hollywood. In a legal filing, Paramount and the state attorneys general said they had reached an agreement to freeze the $111 billion merger while the case works its way through court, extending a shorter pause imposed this week by a federal judge in California. Across the Atlantic, natural disasters are forcing tens of thousands from their homes. French officials ordered the evacuation of the Cap Ferret Peninsula, a popular Atlantic holiday destination. Fires west of Madrid were closing in on populated areas. Tens of thousands of people fled their homes on Friday as wildfires ravaged vast areas of France and Spain, with broiling summer temperatures across Western Europe exacerbating the ferocity of the blazes. In southwestern France, the authorities ordered the evacuation of the Cap Ferret Peninsula. Hundreds of people fled by boat as a fast-moving wildfire approached. Firefighters were battling what Sophie Brocas, the prefect of the Nouvelle-Aquitaine region, described as a highly unpredictable XXL wildfire. In international justice, a leadership change has occurred at the world's highest court. The International Criminal Court, which prosecutes some of the world's most serious crimes, has been in limbo for years over the allegations against Karim A. Khan, its top prosecutor. Khan was removed from his position after a 20-month-long investigation into allegations that he sexually harassed a subordinate. The decision came down to an assessment that Mr. Khan had committed serious misconduct and a breach of duty. The ICC's Assembly of States Parties, the governing body that brings together its 125 member nations, made the decision during a session. Back in the United States, the president has taken aim at a prominent museum. President Trump said the signage at the National Museum of American History would correct what a disputed White House report described as extreme political activism. He then ordered warning signs and exhibits installed outside the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History to alert the public that the museum does not, in his view, accurately reflect American history. The unusual directive, made through an executive order, was a considerable escalation of the president's dispute with the Smithsonian and its History Museum, which was the subject of a recent 162-page report. The report accused the museum's director, Anthea M. Hardig, of radical activist ideology and the museum of undermining. In the arena of trade policy, legal challenges are mounting. Two small businesses sued the Trump administration on Friday over the latest tariffs it has imposed around the world, touching off another legal battle that could redefine President Trump's powers to wage a global trade war. The businesses are represented by the Liberty Justice Center, a legal group that has successfully challenged President Trump's past duties. The new challenge concerned the tariffs that the government had put in place just hours earlier, covering more than 80 countries including Canada, Mexico, and the 27 members of the European Union. The lawsuit, filed in a federal trade court, argued that the Trump administration had misused the law in its attempt to recreate the same system of. In South America, natural disasters have laid bare stark inequalities. Latin America's deep-seated inequalities prevailed over the grimly equalizing force of the Venezuela earthquakes, and set even the dead apart. A photograph showed Michelle Mendoza, 16, standing next to a truck holding her mother's coffin after being turned away from a cemetery. The teenager sat in the passenger seat of a pickup truck beside her mother's coffin and merged into traffic along a coastal road in Venezuela. Michelle Mendoza had escaped the wreckage of one of the many high. Closer to home, a simple act of kindness caught the internet's eye. The helpful driver was not Peter Parker but Chris Helenthal, a college student returning from a summer job. He could have changed out of his Spider-Man costume before leaving work on Tuesday, but instead kept the costume on, mask and all, for the short drive home from his job at a trampoline park in Jonesboro. He described the outfit as skin-tight, but it's breathable. When he stopped his red truck at a multi-lane intersection and saw a man in a wheelchair struggling to cross the street at a red light, he put the truck in park, jumped out to push the wheelchair to the other side, then sprinted back to his vehicle. Traveling east to Central Asia, a traditional sport is seeing a new generation of participants. Kokbaro, a traditional Kyrgyz pastime, is like polo, but with bare hands instead of mallets and a goat carcass instead of a ball. It is intense, sometimes dangerous, and male-dominated. But last year, 6 teenage girls formed the country's first women's Kokbaro team. The Dispatch also notes Benjamina Bakirova competing in Asselbash. From the world of sports to the hardwood, a basketball legend is making a historic move. LeBron James informed the Los Angeles Lakers earlier this summer that he would not return for a 9th season with the franchise. Luke Hale/Getty Images captured the moment. LeBron James has found the next stop in his historic NBA career. The league's all-time leading scorer has agreed to join the Philadelphia 76ers, he announced Friday on social media, beginning the record 24th season of a career that has already redefined longevity and greatness. The deal is for 2 years and $8 million, a league source with direct knowledge of the agreement told The Athletic on the condition of anonymity, the minimum for a veteran of James' service. He said, "I believe I can help make the Philadelphia 76ers a championship team and I am so excited." Joel Embiid is his new teammate, and James chose the 76ers because they presented the best chance of winning another title, according to The Athletic. Staying in sports, a cyclist is chasing history on the mountains of France. Tadej Pogačar celebrates as he records a historic victory on Alpe d'Huez. The Slovenian began arguably cycling's most famous climb more than 3 minutes down on remnants of the breakaway but ascended it in a time of 35 minutes and 27 seconds, one of the most momentous performances the sport has witnessed. The early part of the day was shaped by the battle between Richard Carapaz and Valentin Parrot-Painter for the polka dot jersey, a large group containing both riders getting clear and the Frenchman taking maximum KOM points on the Col Bayard in call. Beyond the podium, athletes often share wisdom that transcends competition. The Athletic's Peak newsletter asked 13 successful athletes to share the single best piece of mental advice they've ever received. The hope is that some insight might stay with the reader somewhere in their answers. For example, Stephen Curry, a 4-time NBA champion and 2-time NBA MVP who has spent his entire career with the Golden State Warriors, credited his coach, Bob McKillop, with the advice that, in the music world, a reflective look at fame and its pressures. Conor Oberst may not fit the industry archetype for a former child star, yet since he was 12 years old, people have built businesses around his homemade, shaky-voiced folk songs, making him the reluctant, adolescent poster boy for 2000s indie rock and then a potential cautionary tale about the burden of such pressures. Definitely everything that was ever written about me or our bands, forever, started with Wunderkind or some reference to how young I was, because I was very young, Oberst, now 46, told Popcast, the New York Times culture chat show, in a recent interview. As the frontman and creative foundation of Bright Eyes and other groups. Moving from music to lifestyle, there are a few light-hearted topics making the rounds at the dinner table. The legacy of Colonel Sanders is up for sale, including his ties. Ruched loafers are the shoe trend of the era, they look like a standard life loafer until you hit the toe, which wrinkles like a shirt in need of ironing. You can find them in boutiques where the salespeople are icy and the cashmere sweaters start at 4 figures. Tom Ford's ruched slip-ons run to $1,190, while Saint Laurent offers them in glossy leather and tan suede. The actors Deborah Winger and Arliss Howard, both 71 and have been married for nearly 30 years, have aged into a married couple's acting tradition that Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin began. They had been approached to star in a downtown Manhattan production of The Gin Game, the D.L. Coburn play that won the Pulitzer Prize in 1978. It has nestled in the theatrical canon ever since, an old people classic about a pair of card-playing nursing home residents whose budding acquaintance holds the potential to assuage their loneliness. Winger and Howard, who are both 71 and have been married for nearly 30 years, had never seen or read the play yet. Alan Turing's creative side emerges in richer detail from a newly transcribed short story. A Cambridge professor has transcribed a handwritten story that the famous mathematician wrote in the year before his death, presenting a different side of him. Many people may know Alan Turing as the British mathematician who helped crack the supposedly impenetrable Nazi Enigma code during World War II. Others may recognize him as the father of modern computing who foresaw the rise of AI. And modern audiences may imagine Turing as Benedict Cumberbatch, who portrayed him in the 2014 film The Imitation Game. But what many people may not have known is that Turing was also a talented creative writer with a playful side, according to Sarah Dillon, a professor of English literature at Cambridge University. Looking ahead to the weekend, there are some suggestions for how to unwind. Cook an easy, flavor-packed stir-fry, the secret ingredient being ground chicken. Watch these movies before they leave Netflix next month. Notable titles leaving for U.S. subscribers include a stunning literary adaptation and the movie that made Eddie Murphy a cinema star, along with 2 80s classics, an acclaimed literary adaptation, a thoughtful drama and a delightfully amoral action flick among the most noteworthy titles departing Netflix in the United States in August. Stream them while you can. The dates indicate the first day titles are unavailable and are subject to change. Read The Mortons, which was one of our book review's top picks this week. Try out the wet hair look techniques shared by the musician Tyla, the model Amber Valletta and the hairstylist Candice Burns share their techniques, with the wet look hairstyle telegraphing offhand ease and the reminder that if you're in a beautifully pressed Armani or Valentino suit, a great wet look you can move your hands through is preferable, as noted by the Los Angeles-based hairstylist Candice Burns. Slap a watermelon, it really can help you find a perfectly sweet one. Take this week's news quiz. Play today's connections, spelling bee, and mini crossword. Finally, a lingering piece of history has opened its doors to the public. A new museum reveals how Britain's intelligence secretly wiretapped Nazi commanders in a stately London mansion and how a team of German Jewish refugees helped turn the tide of World War II. Trent Park, a country home in North London, became part of an audacious strategy for extracting information from German officers during World War II. The German generals were chatting freely, exchanging tidbits about the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range ballistic missile that the Nazi. That's your evening briefing. Thanks for listening. I'll be back on Monday.